You've definitely heard the name Marie Curie, right? It's one of those names that just means genius. But the story behind the name, it's so much more than that. It's this incredible, revolutionary tale of defiance, resilience, and just a pure passion for knowledge that would literally change the world forever.
I mean, her life was just a series of firsts that sound totally impossible for one person. Think about this. The first woman to win a Nobel Prize. The first person ever to win it twice. And she's still the only person in history to win a Nobel in 2 different scientific fields. On top of that, she was the first woman to become a professor at the University of Paris, and the first woman to be laid to rest in the Pantheon on her own merits. So the big question is, how did one woman, against all odds, do all of that?
Well, to really understand her, we've got to go back to the very beginning, to a time and a place that was basically designed to stop her before she could even start. Her early life in Poland was just filled with tragedy and oppression. She was born when Warsaw was under Russian rule, and her family lost everything fighting for Polish independence. Then, by the time she was only 10, she'd already lost both her mother and a sister to disease. And even though she was brilliant in school, graduating with top honors, she wasn't allowed to go to university. And why? Simply because she was a woman. So for years, she had to work as a governess, just saving up money and studying in secret, totally determined to get the education she was being denied.
So to make this dream happen, she made this amazing pact with her sister. The deal was, Maria would work to pay for her sister Bronislava's medical degree in Paris, and then, years later, Bronislava would do the exact same thing for her. It was this incredible strategy built on sacrifice, family, and just this unshakable belief in what she knew she could achieve.
And that pact worked. It eventually got her to Paris, and that's where her scientific journey was about to truly ignite. In Paris, she was looking for some lab space, and she got introduced to a physicist named Pierre Curie. Their connection was, well, immediate. It was built on this shared, all-consuming passion for science. And that meeting didn't just spark a marriage, it sparked one of the most important scientific partnerships in all of history.
Now their lab, don't picture some fancy state-of-the-art facility. It was basically a shed, a drafty, damp, leaky shed. But inside this miserable little space, through back-breaking physical work, I'm talking processing tons of raw ore by hand, they would literally change the laws of physics. They came up with a theory of radioactivity, discovered that another element, thorium, was also radioactive, and they painstakingly isolated 2 brand new elements, polonium, which she named for her homeland, and the legendary, intensely radioactive radium.
You see, Marie Curie didn't just discover things, she defined them. She's the one who came up with the term radioactivity, and her core idea was completely revolutionary. She suggested that these rays were coming from inside the atom itself. Now, at the time, everyone thought atoms were these tiny, solid, unbreakable little balls. She was basically saying, no, there's something else going on in there. That single idea was the dawn of particle physics. And discovering polonium and radium was so important because they were hundreds of times more radioactive than uranium, which gave scientists these powerful new tools to actually study what was going on inside the atom.
So, this period of intense discovery, it brought her global fame, but it was also a time of just profound personal loss and a real fight for her own recognition.
1903. This is the year. The world finally takes notice. The Curies, along with Henri Becquerel, are awarded the highest honor in science, the Nobel Prize in Physics.
But here's a crazy fact you might not know. She was almost completely erased from that honor. The Nobel Committee's initial nomination, it was only for the 2 men, Pierre Curie and Henri Becquerel. Marie, whose research started the entire field, was just left out.
It took a sympathetic committee member to secretly alert Pierre. And to his absolute credit, Pierre refused to accept the award without her. He basically told them the work was fundamentally hers, so the committee gave in, and Marie's name was added. Think about that. She didn't just win the Nobel Prize, she had to fight for the credit she had already earned.
Then, just 3 years after this incredible high, her entire world was shattered. Pierre was crossing a street in the rain, and he was hit by a horse-drawn carriage and killed instantly. She lost her husband, her partner, and her closest scientific collaborator, all in a single moment.
And though she was just devastated by grief, she refused to stop. The University of Paris offered her Pierre's professorship, and she accepted. She became the first woman to ever hold that kind of position at the university. She decided she would not only continue their work, but she would build a world-class laboratory in his name.
Her challenges, though, were far from over.
In the years that followed, she'd face a vicious public scandal, she'd contribute heroically to a world war, and she'd achieve her greatest scientific triumph yet.
Okay, so in 1911, news breaks that she's having an affair with a married colleague, and the press was just brutal. They painted her as this foreign homewrecker, tapping into all the ugly xenophobia and sexism of the time. It got so bad that an angry mob actually gathered outside her house, and she and her daughters had to flee for their safety.
And right in the middle of all of this chaos, she's awarded her second Nobel Prize. The committee, worried about the controversy, basically suggested she shouldn't come to Stockholm to accept it. Her response was just perfect. She wrote back, and I quote, "The prize has been given to me from my discovery of polonium and radium. I cannot accept that there is any connection between my scientific work and the facts of my private life." She was not going to be intimidated.
And she went. She went to Stockholm, and she accepted her second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, and this time all by herself. It was the ultimate vindication, a testament to her refusal to let anyone else define her or her work.
But then, when World War I broke out, Curie didn't just retreat into her lab. No, she charged onto the front lines. She knew that X-rays could help surgeons find shrapnel in wounded soldiers, saving countless lives and limbs. So what did she do? She developed mobile X-ray units. They were nicknamed Petites Curies, or Little Curies, and she drove them to the battlefield herself, training other women to do the same thing.
And the impact was just staggering. It's estimated that over 1 million soldiers were treated with her X-ray units. This wasn't abstract science anymore. This was science being used to save human lives on a massive, massive scale.
So that brings us to the final legacy of this incredible life. It's a legacy that is literally etched into the periodic table and into our very understanding of the universe itself.
You know, there is a deep, tragic irony to her story. Marie Curie died in 1934 from a bone marrow disease, and it was almost certainly caused by her decades of unprotected exposure to radiation. She used to carry test tubes full of radium around in her pockets. The very element that she discovered, the source of her life's work, was ultimately what caused her death.
But her legacy? It's immortal. She's honored in the Pantheon in Paris. The unit we use to measure radioactivity, the Curie, is named for her and Pierre. So is element 96 on the periodic table, curium. The research institutes she founded are still at the forefront of the fight against cancer. She didn't just discover elements. She inspired generations and proved that genius has absolutely no gender.
Marie Curie's life just shows us that one person's curiosity and perseverance can change our entire understanding of reality. She faced down the scientific establishment, a hostile press, an immense personal tragedy, all to pursue the truth. And it leaves us with one last thought. She shattered the barriers of her time. So what about us? What barriers are we ready to break today?